Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. This is the work session for March the 23rd, 2021. We're meeting at City Hall with limited physical access because of the current pandemic, but we have made accommodations to make sure that the public's able to participate either by Franklin TV or the City of Franklin website or Facebook and new YouTube accounts. And there also is a call-in number, 1-312-626-6799, meeting ID 942-607-70257 with a passcode of 170222. Callers will be unmuted and given an opportunity to comment during the meeting at specific times. There's also some limited viewing here in City Hall out in the lobby. The public may email comments and questions prior to 3:30 on the day of the meeting to the recorder at franklintn.gov to be read aloud, and those comments are limited to 2 minutes. Here are the links: youtube.com/user/City of Franklin. Another one is facebook.com/City of Franklin, and the old dependable franklintn.gov/Franklin TV. We're now called to order. I'm going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Martin.
Present.
Alderman Schroer.
Present.
Alderman Speedy.
Present.
Alderman McClendon. Alderman Blanton.
Present.
Alderman Peterson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Berger.
Present.
Thank you. We'll now go on to item number 1, which is resolution 2021-43, a resolution declaring that the Board of Mayor and Alderman members shall meet on March 23rd, 2021 for a work session, conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location because it's necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Thank you, Alderman Blanton. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Barnhill. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon. Absent. Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. We'll now go to citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. Are there any citizen comments tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to work session discussion items. And we'll go to item 2, which is an event permit for Bourbon and Bubbles event sponsored by iHeart Media on May 22nd, 2021 at the park at Harlansdale Farm, partially benefiting Friends of Franklin Parks.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just make a couple comments, and then I think Melissa and maybe Lisa as well will have some more to talk about this event. This is one we've been approached to have on May 22nd. It would be a ticketed event, up to 2,000 attendees at the park at Harlansdale Farm. It would be extensive area outdoors where there can be a great deal of spacing. We are working closely with the organizer around meeting various COVID protocols, even in that size of an event. Our team members are all largely fully vaccinated at this point. So we are sort of dipping our toe into a larger event, but in a controlled area that does still have a great deal of space available for distancing and we think for the appropriate precautions. We are taking all of that, though, with a grain of salt in terms of continuing to keep an eye on COVID numbers and the guidance from public health experts as well. So I'll let Melissa or Lisa add anything else they want to or touch on important aspects of this event for your consideration.
Yeah, the event was originally supposed to take place in April, and because of COVID and the vaccination, they did push it back to a later date at the end of May. And the organizer, Candace Price, is here. I think Eric covered most of the things that are in the memo, but if you'd like to hear from the organizer, Candace, she's here and she can tell you a little bit more about the event as well.
Okay, I don't know if anyone wanted to hear anything or not, but yeah, I've been doing events for 20 years. This will kind of be the first time out of the gate with, the new COVID guidelines and things like that. But with iHeartMedia being a big corporate organization, we are very cautious in making sure that we are doing all of the things that we need to make sure that we keep everyone safe. And so we will be very diligent in making sure that we keep the community safe, but looking forward to making this into an annual event. And, I think you've covered what it is, when it is, where it is, and who it benefits. But if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any.
Any questions, comments from the board?
Mayor, I do have one question.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
It says partially benefiting Friends of Franklin Park. Who else does it benefit?
iHeartMedia does benefit. We are a for-profit organization, so we will, retain some of the proceeds from the event as well.
Are you at liberty to say how much?
It depends on how much we're going to be bringing in, but what we usually do is 15% of our ticket proceeds go back to our nonprofit partner. We take on all of the risk of the expense for everything that's associated with the event, for the rentals and, everything that's needed to put on the event, as well as all of the marketing and media that we put behind the event as well.
So 15% goes to Franklin Parks, 85 to iHeart.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Friends of Franklin Parks.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Friends of Franklin Parks, 15% and 85% to iHeart. Okay.
Are there sales at the gate, or are they all prior commitments?
In a perfect world, we would sell out prior to the event date. And with, this is a kind of a smaller to mid-size event. And I think that with all of the pent-up demand of, people wanting to get back out to events and all of that, I do hope that we'll be sold out before the day of the event.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess one question in conjunction with the pilgrimage. What did we make the music stop at 8 o'clock for pilgrimage? And is that up for review as well? Maybe on the next item?
Yeah, that's the next item, deals with a request to extend that beyond 8 o'clock, which had been the standard before. We do have a different regulation in place around amplification in our sound or noise ordinance, as it's called. So there's different elements there. On this event, I don't have the time right in front of me.
It's 5 to 9 p.m.
Okay.
And the music is all acoustic music, so there will not be any amplification, I believe, right, Candace?
Yes, we're planning on, it's definitely not a concert event. We're looking to have a couple of different areas where we would have just, acoustic and, maybe if there's a rule that there's no amplification whatsoever, we can certainly do that. Or if we need to do something smaller, but it's, we're looking at maybe 3-man, jazz or country or maybe some bluegrass even.
Okay, item 3.
All right,
Event. I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Item 3, special event permit for the Pilgrim Music and Cultural Festival at the park at Harlansdale Park Farm to be held September 24th, 26th, 2021.
And really items 3.
Items 3 and 4 do relate to one another. Item 3 is the specific event permit request for the 2021 year. And item 4, as you may remember, we've provided for a 5-year planning window, and this would add a new 5th year onto that planning window for the Pilgrimage Festival of 2025, with of course there being always each year is brought to you for specific approval and review, as well as the review that our special events team does. But in terms of the 2021 event, it is largely similar to what you've seen in the past. There is one fewer stage, major stage. There's 2 main stages in the event this year as planned. The one other difference is the organizer has requested to extend the hours to 10 p.m. for both Saturday and Sunday of the event. That in the past has been limited or capped at 8 o'clock. So they are requesting to go 2 hours later on both days. The special event committee and staff recommendation on this is to allow the extended hours to 10 o'clock on Saturday, but not on Sunday, from our review and judgment of the event. But otherwise, it is largely consistent with what you've approved in previous years. It's capped at 25,000 tickets per day, ticketed customers per day. The setup begins September 13th and teardown is projected to end around the 1st of October. So that is, again, fairly consistent with what we've seen in the past. I think that window is a little tighter from the experience we've had over the years working with the organizer. I'll stop there and see if Melissa or Lisa has anything to add on this event.
Brant Wood is here to speak to the event. I've been told we won't be the first large festival in the country, so I think he has some information about that and what the scene is like around the country. So Brant, if you want to speak to the board.
Sure. Thank you, Melissa. Make sure that my mute is off. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So I really appreciate the time tonight being back on the agenda, seeing all the familiar faces, mayor, city staff, board of aldermen. It is exciting to be looking at more daylight with regards to COVID. It's been a super trying year. If you remember, you guys approved our permit last year, and we simply made the right call along with the rest of our industry to table plans, tours, festivals, mass gatherings, or really any gathering. So we haven't let the grass grow under our feet, so to speak. We've been planning with the ample time, putting a great lineup together. Our team comes back intact with one very important addition. We have a new general manager, festival director. His name is Adam Gelfond. He is on the call with us, and his team has been, and Adam, if I might just introduce you, you might have to make a noise for your screen to pop up, but he's with us as well as our office manager, Liz Dean.
Hello, everybody.
Adam and his team at Red Light, it has a very big presence in Nashville, Charlottesville, and Los Angeles. They are the premier entertainment management company. They produce many festivals and have interest in lots of music industry machinations. And so he brings a lot of experience and a team to the table that we're excited about working with. We have, built on our successes in the past. We've certainly been through trials as well, whether it's weather or learning how to properly park and ingress and egress this festival. And so even though last year would have been our 6th year, I think we're calling this our 7th year because we're in year 7. And we carefully fill out this permit, looking at ways we've done things and how to improve, how to obviously make sure the festival's on good economic footing, make sure we're doing what we said we were going to do, which is create a world-class boutique festival in Franklin, something the city can take ownership of, be proud of, look at operations and public safety as preeminent concerns and interests of ours. And this year with the pandemic, hopefully on the decline, we see even more importance in making sure that we've understand the protocols, understand the requirements. And I do want to talk about the hours that we've submitted the change in, but I first wanted to say that we do have eyes on festivals that are opening up, announcing, and going forward with plans to announce their lineups, sell tickets, and be produced. And the good fortune of the timing of this meeting is that in the last month, there's been at least a dozen, maybe more, festivals of a good size, either boutique like us or larger, that have announced plans to go, announce tickets, go on sale, and produce their show. There's a lot that goes into preparing for that announce, so none of that is made without full mindfulness of the environment that we find ourselves in. So we do have documentation and data to share with you guys on what other municipalities and producers and parks and so forth are participating in the sort of resurgence of the music business in the last part of 2021, as Pilgrimage will as well. The timing of the event has always been, as you guys know, and it's and it's 8:30. 8:30 has been our finishing time in the last few years. It did start even earlier. What we realized with pilgrimage is that the patron experience, the headliners going in the evening, from the light show to the fact that people will leave gradually if the timing of the event is up to a certain point. We chose 10 o'clock to request as a way that people will gradually egress the site on foot, in their cars, on their bicycles, instead of en masse. So there's an egress advantage to the request. There's also adding some time, an hour and a half, to the patron experience provides more value. People are getting to watch that headliner, whether it's a Justin Timberlake or Foo Fighters or some of the exciting bands we have on the lineup this year. It simply provides more of the timing of a show at a Bridgestone or a insert other festival that is more typical of a closing hour. A lot of the families will egress more at a more leisurely pace. It obviously adds some economics to the evening, with people making another trip to the food stand or another trip to the bar. So that's something that we would look to if we extended the hours. And it just gives us more value, the bands as well, to provide that late slot. So that's sort of, and we appreciate the idea of let's do it on Saturday night. The consistency of a finished of a close at the same time on both nights gives us and our patrons the opportunity to plan a more consistent evening, whether it's getting a babysitter or whether it's planning your transportation. Having two different times would provide a bit of a challenge in terms of how we market that and how we create value, especially with a one-day pass, Saturday versus Sunday, and that value proposition. So that's sort of some of the thinking behind that approach.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions from the board?
Mayor.
Go ahead, Alderman Bland.
So full disclosure, with the nonprofit partnership, my employer, daytime employer, we don't receive any money, but we are a nonprofit partner. So I want to put that out there. But in speaking to the time change or the time thing, I will start with bless your heart, Brant. In Franklin, it's hard for us to host a Sunday event that goes in a comparable time scheme as a Saturday.
Sure.
And there's no written rule, just like with anything, but it's a hardship for the surrounding residential people and getting children ready for what used to be school the next day, as we all know. I also know that typically on Sundays, you have a little bit more of a populated crowd because you do that church service, tent revival, horrible. I'm sorry, that wasn't the correct analogy, but you're with me.
Right. Sunday service.
Yes. And I think that's been very popular in the past. And I think that would stand as a meter for you to understand the way things function here. This sounds awful, and I'm not trying to say, Brant, do your homework, but I think Sunday needs to have an abbreviated stop time just because historically that's how we function as a community, and maybe back up your artists to accommodate what you have done greatly in an earlier start time on Sunday that pulls in people as an alternative to a church service on the grounds of Harlansdale, which has been extremely well received. Kudos to you. Having a 10 o'clock stop time, as staff suggested to me, is probably not appropriate in this demographic.
Appreciate
Love you. Sorry. Got to be honest.
Other board comments.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandy.
Mayor,
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
in a lot less words, I could live with the 10 on Saturday. And I do agree that I think 8 o'clock is late enough on Sunday. If you need to back it up to an hour earlier start time, and I don't forget what time you said you started on Sunday anyway, you could work that out, but probably not beyond 8 o'clock on Sunday night. And I don't see anything wrong with 10 o'clock on Saturday.
Yes, sir. But just officially, it's been 8:30 the last few years, even though that's only a half an hour. That has been what our close time prior permits approved for. But I'm all ears. I just wanted to get out the reasoning behind it, but you know how we are mindful of what y'all's leadership directs us to. And so I'd love to hear anybody else's thoughts about our approach.
So it has been 8:30?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I apologize. I think I misspoke in saying 8. So
I have no problem with 8:30.
I didn't miss that, Eric.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Clyde on this. I don't have 8:30 is fine on Sunday. I would keep it there. Friday and Saturday, I agree, Brant. I think you need to keep it consistent. I think it does need to be consistent. And you're right. It would space people out from leaving gradually, because people do leave at all different times. And that gives you a little bit more time. And I really have no problem with the 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Beverly. And now let me add in Friday, because you mentioned Friday. We do always permit for Friday, and you guys are kind to approve it. We have, and we've talked with Monique and Melissa and Eric over the years about when you have these sidewalks done, and I understand we're in the middle of that right now, and it's probably easy for me to say from here in Texas how much I'm excited about what's probably a daily grind getting through that road. But what that means to events at Harlansdale and the ease of which people can pass and not contribute to congestion on a school Friday afternoon or business ingress and egress from town is tremendous. And I can't wait to talk about that down the road on what a Friday could look like. We've been doing small things on Fridays, having school students come over and we give them a tour and a peek behind the scenes. That was a big hit last year with hundreds of kids. We've done events Friday night that celebrate you guys and the folks that put this festival together. And so that's always an option. But when the bridge gets built and the sidewalks get built, that's an opportunity for us to talk about what another day of the economic benefits and the experience of pilgrimage could mean, frankly. Yeah.
Anybody else want to make a comment? Alderman Martin.
Yes, Brant, thank you very much. I will agree with the Sunday earlier closing. We're not San Francisco and New York and Dallas, and we're not those places. We're still a small town compared to those. And there are some things that most of the residents in Franklin hold very dear, and that's Sunday. And so we would appreciate that you're complying with that. Thank you, Brant.
Thank you, Margaret.
Anybody else want to make a comment before we move on?
If I could just,
my last comment would be to even go to 10:30 on Saturday night, because I know I hear those dang fireworks going off when they close the Ag Expo Fair every year.
Councilman Speedy's always been an advocate of looking at the hours here. So that was part of our motivation. Thank you. Also, I think Adam wanted to add in some of his thoughts.
I absolutely understand, everybody's concerns. And we did have these conversations when we started the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival in Manchester, which is also a very, close-knit community. And I think, as we introduced the notion of continuing an event that ultimately in Manchester for Bonnaroo did go until 4 a.m., it sounds a little daunting to think that there will be amplification or loud music until 10 p.m. However, a typical concert curfew is about 11 p.m. And, I'm not here to try to convince you. I just in the sake of, trying to create a world-class event in a really great city like Franklin, it is beneficial for us from an organizer standpoint to be able to communicate and garner the attention of world-class artists that can perform later into, because at 8:30 you're still sort of at dusk in September when you can offer them an opportunity to present their show and their performance, you know, in total darkness, in all their glory. And we look to do that on Saturday and Sunday. So I don't need to belabor it. I just wanted to mention that, you know, as we, you know, and hopefully keep the discussion up for consideration.
Thank you.
Can I just
Ready
say-
to move on? Go ahead, Alderman Martin.
Adam, thank you for your thoughts. I will have to say that when Brant first brought this to us before the very first pilgrimage, I think I was the one that asked, I said, it's not going to be a Bonnaroo, is it? And he assured me that it was not. So when you say that, you see, that even makes it clearer to me that there should be that difference. You go to, I don't care how late you go in Manchester, whatever they agree to, but Franklin is Franklin. And I know you appreciate that. Thank you.
Understood. And I was just merely trying to reference. I apologize if I tried to mix it up.
No, but I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, it's just that this is not needing to sell the point that the age difference is probably, you know, between one show and the other is really more parents than their college kids. So they're two very different events. But what's interesting is that we're all in the music business, and to do a quality event, we do share a lot of staff. Occasionally we share an artist or two, but the idea of right sizing it and right timing it is important and not lost on us. We've always enjoyed this transparent, honest relationship with each other and asking for things that we think are beneficial, and having an honest reply is I think part of the relationship. And so I appreciate y'all hearing us.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, City of Franklin Contract 2020-30345 Parkland Impact Fee Agreement with Cross Family LP for property known as Tuckaway PUD.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. So the contract before you is a Parkland Impact Fee Agreement for fees only regarding 34 dwelling units for a total of $146,336. The fees would be allocated to Quadrant 2, which is known as the Southeast Municipal Complex in this area, and Parks is recommending approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't see any questions. We'll move on to items 6, 7, and 8. We'll take those together, which is for the Chadwell Partnership for Parkland Impact Fee Agreement and the Road Impact Fee reimbursement, and also the reimbursement of costs for sanitary sewer collection system.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go first and then my colleagues can follow. Is with the Parkland Impact Fee with Chadwell. They are the PUD subdivision for 1,550 dwelling units for an impact fee of $6,671,200. 25% fee will be allocated to Quadrant 2, which is the Southeast Municipal Complex in this area. And the development is eligible for 75% offset of the reimbursement. They will construct a large park for the neighborhood, along with athletic fields, trails, tennis and cricket courts, along with a variety of amenities for their residents. The Parks Department is recommending approval at this time and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Keep on going then.
As it relates to the road impact fee offset agreement, what it is for $1,334,801.25. And what that gives you is an additional eastbound through lane on Goose Creek bypass. There are other offsite improvements that are required. However, they don't qualify for impact fee offset because they benefit the development and not the arterial roadway. The offset also covers 50% of the signal modifications, and staff is recommending approval of the road impact fee offset agreement.
Anybody? Okay. How about the sewers collection system?
Yes, I'll take that. Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. What you may recall from our last work session and on the voting meeting this evening that we've modified our the approval process for sanitary sewer, water, and reclaimed water infrastructure. That our water management director provides the final approval for design and the location of future city infrastructure. That pertains to, in somewhat to this agreement with the Chadwell property, because as they are creating a mixed use development, they had proposed to extend the infrastructure across their property to the west, but it wasn't in a location that could be easily maintained over a long period of time. And due to the way our current ordinance was written, we've, as staff, concluded that there would be a three-way partnership between the city, Boyle Investments, who's developing Chadwell, and Ford Homes, who's developing the adjacent Southbrook, to each pay a third for Boyle to design and install the interceptor sewer that will serve property to the west long term. And this agreement is only between the city and Boyle Investments, or the Chadwell partnership. In the next month, I'll be bringing you an agreement that's between the city and Ford Homes, in which Ford Homes will pay the other third to the city. So we recommend approval of this agreement.
Any questions or comments? Item 9, grant sewer availability for 1256 Lewisburg Pike.
There. So this is an availability for a property that is located north of the city limits on Lewisburg Pike. Adjacent to the city limits north of 5 Mile Creek. It is, a tap was made for this property during the Henpeck Interceptor project. So the current septic tank is failing for the homeowner and they're about to sell their house. So we wanted to, we're recommending approval based upon the homeowner signing the typical annexation and availability agreement.
Is it just one tap?
Yes. So the tap was already made with the intent on connecting this property in the future when the Henpeck Interceptor was laid. It was just kind of one of those instances where we wait for their septic tank to start failing before they make the connection.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you for those, Alderman Martin.
Mayor.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
Well, you won't know, Melissa, but are they disclosing the possibility of being annexed to the future owner?
So that's one of the reasons why we have this on work session and voting tonight, is that we want to make sure that the annexation agreement is recorded with Williamson County prior to them selling it. That's why this is a little bit fast tracked.
Clear? Ready to move forward? Okay. Item 10, resolution 2021-25, authorizing the request of Justice Cornelia A. Clark to be interred at Rest Haven Cemetery.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't know if Eric was going to say something or.
I was muted, sorry. Lisa and I
The
both
house was moving, but nothing came out.
Lisa and I could both speak to this, but Justice Clark had approached us some time ago. There is some family history related to this cemetery and the plot there. She did extensive research to look at both that history as well as the availability, the ability to be interred there. And so with that all in mind, we've had some communication with her, and this request comes forward to make that approval, provide that approval for future use of a plot at that cemetery, which is largely a closed cemetery with the exception of what could be documented here, both in terms of the historical connection to it and the availability of land to be used, a plot to be used. So, Lisa, you want to add anything else to that?
No, thank you, Eric. She just plans on not using it anytime soon. So
That's right.
She just needs approval to make the process happen. This has been about a 2 to 3 year process. So I thank her and her family for their due diligence as we work through that process.
Thank you. We'll keep moving along unless there's some comment. Item 11 is Resolution 2021-40, resolution authorizing the use of the competitive seal proposal procurement method for choosing the service providers for both emergency debris clearing and removal services, as well as monitoring of emergency debris clearing and removal services on behalf of both the City of Franklin, as well as other incorporated local governments of Williamson County, including Williamson County government itself. Woo, that was a long one.
Can you tell me what that's about?
So essentially, this is us. The exact action that the board is taking is approving the use of a competitive proposal process. We need your approval up front to go into that direction, where we look at both pricing and the qualifications and the background of the potential contractor to do this. What this essentially is anticipated to provide is if we had an event like a tornado or flood where we needed extensive additional debris removal capacity, that we would have a contractor that could immediately jump in and assist us. And I want to compliment our sanitation and environmental services team, our procurement office, purchasing office, for their work in doing this, and also doing it in such a way that allows us to partner with Williamson County and the other cities in Williamson County to set up this additional capacity should we need it.
So it's mostly just for emergencies.
Yeah, it would be above and beyond what we can do ourselves. And we've got pretty significant capacity between sanitation, streets, and parks folks, as we've seen in more typical events, but this would be probably a larger scale event. Think the flood of 2010, where we needed to do additional debris removal. Our team did a great job, but having additional resources to layer onto that would be very helpful. And that's where this comes from.
Thank you.
Okay, item 12. This is going to be a presentation and on an update to the impact fee collected. To the impact fees collected by the Water Management Department for connection to the city's water and sewer system.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think Michael is pulling up the presentation and he's going to share his screen. So I have with me presenting tonight Sarah Chandler with Jackson Thornton. She's the financial consultant who has done a lot of the calculations, and then I'll kind of interject with some of as it relates to kind of how our operations are going. So we'll kind of do a little bit of tag teaming. All right, so next slide, Michael. All right, so this is kind of just a quick agenda that we're going to talk about the background of where we are leading up to this point, and then Sarah will talk about the definitions of the impact fees, and then we'll go over water and sewer. I'll talk about the project schedule as it relates to the Southeast facility, and then Sarah will then go over the incremental cost for the South, and then we'll talk about the recommendations. So next slide. So just as a little bit of refresher, the last time we went over this, so Sarah had presented back in February of 2020, kind of right before COVID hit and we were all sent home, but kind of an update to the impact fees. And then we kind of did a little bit of more research, and then the water department presented a change in the methodology in January of this year. So this is the second part of that presentation that's going to kind of build upon that. So as you can remember, the current impact fees are based off of the water meter size. So the water meter size for both water and sewer, and it's for both customers, or for city residents and for non-city residents. The reason we're making this change is that meter size is not an equitable capture of the impacts to the system. So based upon the wastewater flow that we receive. And it's the required level of treatment that we have, pretty advanced technologies to meet tighter nutrient limits. So the question is, how do we accurately and equitably predict the impact to the system? So we talked about this in the January presentation, that not all wastewater is created equal. So we can have wastewater from a high BOD loading, high organic loading versus just a resident, and they're not considered equal. It takes more treatment to one versus the other. The other part of this is the impact fees haven't been increased in over 13 years. So looking to kind of just update to make it more equitable and update where we need to be. So we'll go to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Sarah to kind of start talking about some of the background work that she did.
Thanks. Good to see everybody. I'm glad to be here tonight. The first thing, I'm going to walk through these slides, and they're really the next 4 or 5 slides are really more for you to be able to reference, but certainly stop me and ask questions if you have any. But I've walked through this with y'all before, so I know you're familiar with it. But it has been it's been a year since I've met with y'all. So first thing is impact fee is really just a contribution of capital that is made towards existing or planned future plant capacity needs, or any infrastructure needs that you would use to account for growth. So there are 2 methods that are used to make the calculation. The first is the equity buy-in method, and that is just using what your current ratepayers have already paid into the system, sort of determining their equity in the system. We use this for y'all's collection system and for your distribution system. And then the second method is the incremental cost pricing method, and that is determining the price of the new capacity that's being added. And we'll walk through each of it with y'all's actual numbers. But anyway, bottom line is that an impact fee is designed to help growth pay for growth, because one of the tenets of cost of service and how you want to collect your revenues is who's causing you to incur the cost. So if I'm an existing ratepayer and I've been living in Franklin for 30 years, I'm not driving the need for the new capacity. So why should I have to pay for it? So it doesn't change the cost of the investments that y'all have to make, which are vast, but it does more equitably try to get the money from the people that are causing you to incur the cost. So next slide. I'm not used to not being able to click my own slide. So anyway, the equity buy-in approach, I did already touch on that. That just, you want to assess new customers a fee that approximates what your existing ratepayers have already paid in. We use this approach for y'all's water distribution and your sewer collection systems. And then the incremental cost assigns new development, the cost of expansion. All these approaches are all straight out of the M1 manual from the American Water Works Association. We use the incremental cost portion for the treatment plant expansion on the water side, and the water reclamation expansion for the sewer side. Next slide. Process, and we're about to walk through y'all's numbers, so I'll just kind of touch on each one of these. The first thing that you want to do is develop that single family unit equivalent, or SFUE. This puts everybody on equal playing field, so you can determine what the costs need to be for a single family unit, and then those larger users would pay an escalated fee based on the schedule, I think, or based on the methodology that I believe Michelle presented to y'all in January. So I'm not talking about that methodology. I'm just going to walk through how we get to the initial starting point, which is that cost per SFUE. So the equity buy-in, and we determined the SFUE, which for the distribution and collection systems, that's just their equity in it. And then incremental cost, same thing. You're looking at how much capacity you're adding, how much does that cost per residential or per SFUE. And then you take each of those components for each system and add them together to determine what that starting point is, or that single cost for SFUE is. Next slide. All right, so these are y'all's numbers. You can go to the next one. Now we're looking at water and water alone. So the first step is to develop that SFUE. So what we do is we take the total number of bills that you sent out during the period, and the period that we're looking at is FY 2019. And then you take monthly residential usage, which the way y'all design your capacity is using 350 gallons per day per residential customer. So that's 10,646 gallons per day that a residential customer would use. Then you just multiply that times the 365, and you have your annual usage for a residential customer of 127,750 gallons. Then you take and this is a lot of math, and I apologize, but there's really kind of no other way to do it. But the next step in determining the SFUE is to determine the capacity gallons for your residential customer, and that's just taking that the annual usage or the monthly usage times the number of bills that were sent out in the period. So that gives you the 2.1 billion of residential capacity. And then we add to that the other capacity that was used during that test year. So total design capacity for the water system would be 2.6 billion gallons. Then from there, to determine how much the residential or the single family unit equivalent is, you just divide the design capacity by the number of bills that were, or the usage for the residential customers on an annual basis. So that gives you 20,000 SFUEs for the water system. Next slide. Then we're going to start on our equity buy-in approach. So what we're doing here is we're taking the total value of your distribution plant on your water side, on your water system, of 59.8 million. And again, we're looking at FY19. From that, we back away hydrants and taps and meters because the customers don't need to pay for that twice, and they'll pay for a meter when they come onto the system. So from that total distribution plant valuation, we back away contributed capital because your ratepayers didn't buy into that. And then we back away also the balance on long-term debt because they obviously have not paid that yet, and any grant money that you've received. So the current investment of your ratepayers have paid into your distribution plant is that 37 million. So then you take, we can go to the next slide, sorry, and take the 37 million of total investment that your ratepayers have paid in and divide that by the 20,000 single family unit equivalents. And that gives you the average cost per SFUE of 1842. So that's the equity portion on your water system of what your ratepayers have paid in. So someone new coming on to get on equal footing relative to the distribution system would pay the 1842. So then we go to the next step of the process on the next slide, which is to look at the incremental portion. So on the water side, the investment that the investment cost to add the 500,000 gallons per day is 2.5 million. That's that 2.545. You're adding 182 billion or 500,000 gallons a day. So that's your investment and how much you're adding. So the percentage of capacity is just how much capacity are you adding divided by the annual residential usage gives you per SFUE a 0.07% capacity that you're adding, and then you multiply the cost of the investment times the amount of capacity that's being added, and that gives you the average cost per SFUE of $17.82. And then on the next slide, and then I'll pause for any questions that y'all might have. The next slide, you're just adding the two components together. So you're taking for the distribution system, 1842, and for the treatment additional capacity of 1782 for a total cost per SFUE of 3624. Questions? I'll take a breath.
Any questions for Sarah?
I have a question. Now, this is
Yes,
just
ma'am.
for the water customers that's in the City of Franklin Water District. It's not the other many customers that we have in the City of Franklin, but who are getting their water from someplace like Mill Crofton and things like that, right?
Correct. Correct.
So this would be the impact fee that they would pay connecting to the system. So our in our service area.
To become a ratepayer on the Franklin system. Yes. All right. We can go to the next slide. So this is just recapping what we just talked about, which is each of the components adds up to 3624 per SFUE. Your current impact fee is $2,089, and so the change would be $1,535. And again, I believe Michelle mentioned it at the outset. These fees have not been raised, is my understanding, in 13 years. And that's it for the water portion of the presentation. The sewer portion looks very similar, except for the numbers are larger. All right.
So if there's no questions, we can move on to the sewer, and then this one will take a little bit longer to discuss.
Yes. All right, so I will walk through the math again. I know it's painful, but same kind, everything is going to look the same, just with your sewer numbers instead. Annual residential billings, 283,000. Still that same usage because y'all are designing off of 350 gallons a day. So the residential capacity is that 3 billion. The non-residential usage during the period was 870 million. So total design capacity on the sewer system is right at 3.9 billion gallons. And then, so that gives you a total of 30,434 SFUEs. And then you can go to the next slide. So then we look at the design, the equity buy-in portion. So your collection system value at FY19 was 156 million. From that, we're backing away contributed capital and balance on long-term debt and any grants that y'all may have gotten in any of your processes. So the current collection plant investment is at 72.8 million. On the collection system. So that's how much your current ratepayers have paid in over time. So then on the next slide, and I'm moving my cursor because I'm just so used to moving my cursor, but it's not really helping. Anyway, so we've got 30,434 SFUEs. And then the collection plant valuation of 72.8 million. And then you just divide them out, and your current ratepayers, or the average cost per SFUE is $23.91. So then we can move on. So that's the equity portion on the collection system. So now we're going to look at your treatment needs.
Mayor, can I ask a quick question real quick? This is John.
Absolutely, Alderman Schroer. Go ahead.
Could you go back, Sarah, to that last slide? And this is relevant to the water as well. How is the collection plant valuation determined? Is it actual cost? Appreciated value?
It's from your plant.
Okay.
Yes, it's from your plant records. It's what's on your depreciation schedule as your plant.
It's the depreciated value of the cost of the plant is what I'm hearing.
No, it's the cost. It's the cost of it's everything that's been invested in your collection system or your distribution on the water side. So the cost of those investments, not the cost less depreciation.
Okay, all right. So I need. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. All right, so we've got the so now we're looking at the incremental portion on the sewer plant. So there are two pieces to it, and we separated them out. So the first part of the incremental is going to be the capacity at the North Plant. So what is being added? So how much capacity is being added is 4 million gallons a day. And that's that 1.460 billion. And then the cost of that is 33 million. Y'all borrowed 33 million at 1.47 interest rate for 30 years. So that's the 40.8 million that we have as the projected treatment investment. You're investing that much to add the 4 MGD. And then that is the percentage of capacity is that 0.0087. So then you're just each SFU is that percentage of capacity. So you multiply the investment of 40.8 million times the percentage of capacity gives you the 3573. So per average cost per SFUE. So that's the next piece that we're going to be adding to the sewer fee. So you can go to the next slide. Okay. And then the second part of the incremental approach is where y'all are looking at the South Plant capacity and adding 8 MGD facility. So the projected total cost and management, Michelle, and everyone has outlined that over here to the left. So the total investment is 179.2 million. And this 289 is reflective of 179.2 million at 3.5% over 30 years. That is after discussions with management. That's a very conservative estimate on when you go to market, you might be able to get a better interest rate than that. But, it seems prudent to plan around a more conservative number because nobody knows really what interest rates are going to do. But so that is the 289 million. That's what that's reflective of. It adds another 8 MGD a day or 2.92 billion gallons. Again, the same annual usage for an average residential customer. And the capacity that represents gives you an average cost per SFUE of $12,674. And I'll pause here if anyone's got any questions. If not, we can move to the next slide.
I may say, it sounds like the Southeast is a done deal. There was a lot of discussion back some time ago when we were talking about this, but have we ever officially voted that we are absolutely going to do it?
No, so Alderman Peterson, we're actually, so part of the next couple of slides is it's not a done deal, and we've not determined which way where we need the additional capacity yet. So we're actually, the water department is proposing a modified approach to this to account for the costs that we're incurring right now, which is what we'll cover in the next couple of slides.
I think we approved some study of that over the future. We're doing that currently. Started that with one of the consultants.
Yeah. So how about we go to the next slide, and we'll kind of do
that's what right. So just recapping what we've calculated based on those costs, with the recognition that we're not there, y'all are not there yet as far as making all of that investment. The three components, the equity buy-in on the collection system, that's $23.91, and then you've got the existing investment that you're already well underway with, which is $35.73, and then what we've calculated based on what is known or projected at this point of $12.74. So the total investment would the impact fee, if all of that money was spent, would be $18,638 per SFUE. The current impact fee is $35.44. This 15 is not a recommendation at all. So at this point, so before y'all shut me down on the Zoom, how the equivalent of kicking me out or anything, but it is if that is indeed end up being the cost, you're going to get there at some point. So better to measure it now so that you can figure out how you want to get there. But I think if we go to the next slide.
Michelle,
is that where you wanted, Michelle?
Sarah, before we get off of that, so the 2391 and the 3573, my understanding is that needs to be now. Correct. I mean, we haven't done anything in 13 years. We can look at the 12,674, but the 12,674 could come 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road when we review these things again. But specifically, the equity buy-in method and the capacity Claudia Yates, those numbers now are real numbers that we need to be, am I correct? We need to be collecting to be able to pay equitably the cost of the sewage treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant that we're building and what we're currently doing.
Correct. Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct. And it doesn't, those are correct. You haven't made a change in a long time. And then what we're going to do on the 12,674 here in a second is we're going to walk through a portion of those expenses that are already being incurred and carve out a portion of that. But you're absolutely right in that those first two they're known and they're measurable, and there's not any doubt that those need to be paid. It doesn't change the cost of either one of those. Every dollar you get from an impact fee is $1 less that your existing ratepayers have to pay. It doesn't change the cost of any of it, but it does change where you're getting it and getting it in a more appropriate manner.
And the difference is that we collect on every single family unit in the city of Franklin, unlike the water, where we only collect on those who are using the Franklin water system.
Within the city and outside the city for those customers that are connected as well.
Okay.
So this cost, let me just interject. This cost represents the total investment. So when we say total investment, this is if we decide, Alderman Peterson indicated that we may not decide that we need a new plan on the southeast part of town. If we do decide that we need a new plan, this represents where we will need to be in 10 years. So realizing that that is a large investment and there's some unknown variables in there about where we're going to be, we kind of decided to back off of that a little bit and understand the cost that we're incurring at this moment right now, either right now or in the near future. And so that's the next slide, Michael. And if you want to hit it just one more time, so these projects that are happening in the red box right now are the costs that we're incurring for the Southeast facility. So Eric was right. We started an evaluation with Hazen to look at how we would garner potential capacity in that area. And the timeline, if I did months, got too long, so I just did it by quarter. So the purple is the duration of that, how this project looks for the next 10 years. So the design is anticipated to take a little over 3 years from start to finish. And by the end of that, we anticipate having a recommended alternative of either plans, no plan, or other methodology. So concurrently, while that's happening, we're going to be running a pilot plant to kind of determine what some of our disposal options are with advanced technologies that can help us with our with the permitting of the new facility. And so that's the green. We actually anticipate starting that July 1st. So that's a cost that's going to be incurred in the near future. And then we'll be operating that pilot plant for 10 months after construction. And that's that blue cost. So those are the costs that we're incurring right now to get us to the point where we're determining if we need a new facility or not. And so those are the costs that we're recommending be included in the incremental cost fee for the Southeast plant to be implemented right now. So in the previous slides, we talked about the total investment. This is kind of carving out just the cost that we're incurring. I'll let Sarah go over what those costs.
So you can go to so you can go to the next slide, please. All right, so the projects that Michelle just outlined, the total cost for those is $7.22 million. And so this 11.6 is just reflective of those projects that are either already in process or approved to be in process. So that's 7.22 at 3.5% over 30 years. Again, the annual usage is the same capacity percentage, and that gives you the average cost per SFUE of $511. So what, I guess you can go to the next slide, or do y'all have questions on that one? So then what we're saying here in this slide is the first two components that we discussed a few minutes ago, plus the portion of the south plant or the new capacity that y'all are going to need in the future of 511 gives a total of $64.75 per SFUE. And that would be an increase of $23.91 to get you where you need to be right now. And then knowing that whatever decisions y'all make and the estimated costs that are going to be in the future, 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the road, if you can get where you need to be now, then that will help you start being able to be in a position to make incremental steps, similar to what we've done on cost of service, and stepping into that over time so that it's more fair and equitable to all those concerned that are going to be paying the fees and doing the project.
So we'll go to the
go to the next one. Yeah.
So our recommendation is on the water side, we recommend increasing the 3624, which represents the investments that have already taken place. For the sewer side, we recommend increasing the impact fees to recapture the project costs that are currently in place. So that's the cost that Sarah just went over, the 6,400, the 6,500 essentially, and that's the investments that are being incurred right now. So kind of in summary, so increasing the impact fees now will allow for incremental increased costs to recapture, to fully recapture the cost incurred due to development. which is kind of one of the main reasons why we're undertaking the Southeast capacity evaluation. So increasing the impact fees now will result in larger financial reserves, which will reduce the amount that we'll need to borrow for a new facility. That will in turn reduce the future impacts to existing ratepayers for debt service repayment. So we're kind of trying to be a little forefront on our recommendations and increasing in this increase of impact fees to account for that. Is there any, before we move to a timeline, is there any questions or comments?
Michelle, is there a different rate for inside and outside the city limits of Franklin?
No, we didn't calculate that.
Okay.
There are on the user fee side, but not on the impact fees.
Okay. So we still got the user fee rate difference then. All right.
So in other words, this is just for City of Franklin inside. Inside the City of Franklin Water District.
The impact fees are a set number based on the cost and the allocation of the investments. The rates have the outside of Franklin difference, not on the impact fee side.
Right. But because the idea is that growth is paying for growth, whether they're inside the city limits or outside the city limits. If they're using your capacity or your collection or distribution system, then they should pay a fee to be able to do that.
But wait just a minute. We're saying that there are many water customers that are inside the city limits of Franklin, but are not in the city of Franklin water utility districts. So they are paying different fees. Is that correct?
Well, they're not in the context of the water. They're not in your water district, but they are pretty much all in your sewer district. So they'll be paying the sewer fees, but they will not pay impact fees on water.
But the sewer fees are going to be paid by inside and outside the city.
Yes, correct. On the user fee side, yeah.
So can you extrapolate that if you're building a home inside the city today, if these fees were passed, that a new home would have almost $10,000 worth of fees, impact fees for water and sewer?
More than 10.
Yes.
You're faster at it than me, Peterson.
Actually, repeat that, Mayor, because I don't think that's right. If you're not in the water district for the city of Franklin, you won't pay the $36.24, but you will pay the $64.75, right?
Correct.
You would pay the impact fee that is established in each of the water districts that serve.
Yeah, they may have impact fees as well.
That's right.
Any other questions? Is there another slide, Michelle?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Alderman.
Yes.
Will,
Go ahead, Alderman Martin.
will increasing these fees to what you have shown us, will that put us where we need to be?
So these amounts that we show, the for sewer, the $6,500, it'll increase us to the amount. It'll increase us to the amount for the next 3 or 4 years. We can before I answer your question, Alderman Martin, let's go to the next slide. So this is kind of where I talk about we talked about the total investment versus the costs that are being incurred right now. What we recommend is to kind of establish some sort of methodology for if we determine in 3 years to move toward a new plant, that we need a new facility for that additional capacity due to growth, that we recommend some sort of methodical approach toward increasing impact fees for that total investment amount. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, answered a different way. It gets you to where you need to be with the investments that we have made and that we know about. There will be future steps based on decisions you make about additional wastewater treatment capacity down the line, but this does get you up to date with the costs we have incurred and that we know about.
but not including the new sewer plant.
No, because you haven't made those decisions yet. And as we move that forward, we'll have a better handle on costs associated with that as we make other decisions down the line. I would expect, as you saw that chart, probably about 3 years out, you'll be looking at this again and updating it based on those costs and how you want to allocate those costs to the impact fee structure.
Thank you.
The other thing I'd mention just related to that, we've touched on a couple times that, it's been 13 years. And I realize that's longer than we normally go with this sort of structure, but I do want to put it in the context of it's not been that long ago that we completed a major water treatment plant upgrade and enhancement. That cost is known, and now we're allocating it here. We're a little over a year or so away from completing significant expansion and upgrade of the water reclamation or wastewater treatment plant. So we really, while we didn't put those in, we waited until we had a real clear connection to what those costs were going to be, and then we think appropriately allocating them into the impact fee system. So while it has been longer than you normally would do, I think it has allowed us to really understand, make decisions around what you wanted to do on those plants, get the real costs in hand, and then allocate them to growth appropriately. And in both projects, you did have impact fees contribute to lower the amount that we needed to borrow along the way as well.
Mayor, if might have a question, please.
Absolutely, Alderman Shore, go ahead.
No, the only, I'm just thinking about this, we're building capacity not only for future growth, but we're building capacity for growth that we've already incurred. And so really at some point in time, the new growth is paying for the last growth over a period of time that's happening. Otherwise, we might not need the new plan. So there's a group in there that would be served by the Southeastern plan that are going to get the opportunities to have that would not have paid any fee for the construction of the plant that is needed because they're there now. And that's a kind of a big question, and I'm not sure it's one you want to tackle, but in reality, that last group of growth people that maybe has caused us to build a new plant are getting away without having to pay a new impact. That makes sense?
I would concur.
It does. I would say, though, we did allocate $20 million of existing impact fees from the folks that paid those to the plant expansion that's going on right now. There's always a timing of when you allocate costs. And yeah, you can say whoever paid that impact fee right before we allocated it may have gotten a better deal than the person who paid it after. But we've tried to allocate costs as we know them and as we can appropriately assign them. And I would say, you'll be looking at updating this in the next probably 2 to 3 years as we try to align it with the policy decisions you make about the next plant. So there's always that dynamic in there. I think Sarah can tell you that that's always something you look at when you make those decisions, when to allocate what portion of it. And so that's kind of where we are.
If you wait till you've already spent it. Yeah.
I don't think we ought to. My point is, I think everybody just ought to be aware of that. I don't think we're going to make any changes, but I think you ought to realize that. And really, quite frankly, it really speaks to updating your fees more regularly, because that way, you're catching up quicker, and you're getting. You're not going to have as many people on the line before you raise impact fees. So it's something I think that the city ought to look at really quite more regularly, especially as we go forward. And, as we're building the new plant, if we build a new plant, we need to look at our costs incurred and add those in as we go on. So that, if we spend another, whatever, $20 million for design work, we're going to spend that. And if we are, then we need to go ahead and put that in an impact fee before we wait to the end and we know how much it costs them. We don't know what it costs them until they're designed, quite frankly, but we're going to spend the cost to design it to figure out how much our costs are. So we really do have to look at that as we go along. And I think, so, you know, not maybe annually, but as we have major costs, we need to kind of reflect on that and maybe upgrade our impact fee based on that. That's all.
And that's the intent. That definitely is the intent. And you'll see that on road impact. We do about every 3 to 4 years, and you'll see that coming up soon. The wastewater and water management component has had a lot more components to it as we've gotten rates to where they need to be, and the other allocation of a pretty significant project. But we hear you, and that is the way we need to do it.
What, $268 million, and that what the cost was? That I didn't know what that was, but some number like that. You know, cities never spent that money before, and that much by far. The most biggest one has been the current water treatment plant. So we have to really look at that as we start spending more money. Roads are more not nearly as expensive, or at least for the city, aren't nearly that expensive. So just something that I think we should just, which you are, Eric, I know you are, but I just thought I'd bring that. And I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Shore. Any other comments or questions at this point? Is that the end of the presentation, Michelle?
It is.
Sarah?
Yes.
Well, we got another presentation to go to, if we may, if there's no more questions.
Thank you, ladies, for that presentation.
Thank you.
Item 13 is presentation on the new City Hall facility engagement plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to share my screen and hope that works for us. Do you all see the slides?
Yes, we do.
Okay, fantastic. This is a presentation on the new City Hall engagement plan. Last fall, the BOMA approved consulting services to launch the design process to envision a new City Hall on its prominent location on the historic public square. And the intent is to replace the old mall building that has outlived its lifespan and create a new plan for a vibrant City Hall that contributes to the city and to the fabric of downtown Franklin, and hopefully has some windows. There's a lot of community interest in this project, and this is a really important civic site. And we're before you tonight to check in with where we are and to outline the engagement plan for public input in the coming months. Our staff team, led by Vernon Girth, Joe Marlowe, myself, and Brad Wilson, along with staff representatives across all of the city departments, have been working in close coordination with our consulting team led by OHM Advisors and Studio 8 Design. So to date, we've reviewed a series of case studies that include city halls, corporate office spaces, historical context, site design, engineering structural systems. The consulting team has conducted departmental interviews to determine the space needs for each of the departments, and they're starting to work on the preliminary space planning and programming and adjacencies on how departments should be located within a city hall to make sure that we're functioning efficiently and collaboratively with departments that we interact with on a daily basis. We've also developed a plan for community engagement and public input because this is such an important site. The goal of the plan is to gain important feedback on key elements for a successful city hall on the historic public square. There's going to be 2 rounds. The first round is the information gathering stage to help inform the preliminary master plan. And then the second round will be based on that preliminary master plan, and it will help refine the building program and that plan. The first round is scheduled for this spring, and there are a variety of virtual engagement opportunities here that we will utilize, and they're very effective for us. So we'll use social media posts, a video series that's going to be created by our communications team, an online survey, and virtual family room chats, which are our meetings that we're going to do virtually over Zoom, one for the general public and 2 opportunities for city employees to provide input on a new city hall, and then a couple smaller stakeholder meetings with downtown stakeholders and civic leaders. So some key dates that are coming up are on this slide. We met with the design review committee of the Historic Zoning Commission last night for the first time, and we'll meet with them again in May. We meet with the Franklin Public Arts Commission on April 7th at their regular meeting. And then on May 13th, we have the virtual family room chat through Zoom. On May 24th, we will come back to the Design Review Committee of the Historic Zoning Commission. And then May 27th will be at the Joint Conceptual Workshop, where we'll engage the board and the Planning Commission in input. All of that will help inform that master plan. And the goal is to release that plan on August 16th, which will then kick off the second round of community engagement. So along with that preliminary master plan, the consulting team will release the report from the round 1 community input, and then we'll do a second survey on the design direction that comes out of that master plan. Then we'll hold another public meeting in the fall in September and come back to a joint conceptual workshop and to the board ultimately toward the end of the year, 1st of January. We've put together a website. It's completethesquare.com with hyphens between the words. And that's going to serve as a repository for all of the information that we are putting together for the community outreach and the process and the project information once those deliverables are completed. So this website stands alone, but is linked from our homepage as of today, and also our planning department webpage. So that's just an overview of the outreach program that we'll put on because we want to have as many opportunities as we can for public input because of this highly important location and city facility. And I will try to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, questions?
Eric and the mayor, if I may address the board, please.
Please go ahead, Mr. Girth.
First of all, thank you, Kelly. And again, Alderman, when we kicked off this project and you funded the first phase of this multi-phase development, very important development, no less, that we promised that we would come back to you at the end of this year to phase to fund the second phase, or to ask you to do that, which would be the schematic design. As part of the promise of this initial design and public engagement process, we promised to be inclusive of our entire city team, which Kelly has outlined, that will have significant input of how the interior of this building it will function, but also to include the community. It's their building, and we're very unique in having this opportunity to have a civic building on a historic square, and it's one of the things that sets Franklin apart from other communities. So ask away any questions you have. We realize that these initial engagement process will be virtual, that many people have become acclimated to. But by the time we get to the fall, we're very hopeful that we'll be able to have some in-person engagement as well. And the consultant, along with Kelly and our team, believe that we have provided ample opportunity for this needed input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Girth. Any questions for Kelly or Mr. Girth?
I have some questions, I guess. I've already had a citizens group ask me about the city hall, potential new city hall, and ask and I'll pass this along. They were saying, what do we think that the effects of, the COVID and having managed, I think, that as well as we did by some work at home and other things like that. I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just saying they were asking, do we think that there might be some differences than, say, if we started this a year ago instead of after we've gone through this?
Yeah,
And,
I'll be glad to chime in a little bit on that. It's an excellent question. It's something that we look at. Interestingly, a few months before the COVID pandemic outbreak, we had updated our HR policy to incorporate some remote work and work from home options and how that would be approved and all of those elements. And then we immediately went into that world, and we have learned a lot from that. I think we will see some greater flexibility because of what we've learned. It will certainly help us manage the construction period, but I think it will be remote work will be part of some elements of what we do. Not everything, but some elements of what we do. It does influence how we do this, but we also still recognize the importance of having those opportunities to meet and work collaboratively, work as a team. And so this space and this new city hall would be designed to really help us support both, and then also be just a more vibrant community facility as well. So I think we've learned a lot in the last year. We'll continue to apply those learnings, but also see the opportunity that the new facility could present too.
Well, one of my comments was that I thought the city had handled the last year very well, really. But as I say, I didn't want to pass that along. I have two more small, it's kind of shorter comments to make. One of them is that I am concerned about trying to get a lot of input during, still the COVID time, whenever we haven't been able to have anything except virtual meetings. As I say, that's just a concern of mine. I understand that there have been ways that people have made comments, that were not, say, in person, looking at the pictures in in City Hall, down the hall and everything. So I understand that. But that's my second thing. The third thing is, whenever I saw the stakeholders meetings, from what Kelly said, that would be maybe from other people downtown. But I immediately thought about the thing that occurred a number of years ago when we were talking about parks. And remember, we had stakeholder meetings where people were, the only people that came that knew about it, were invited specifically to come. And I do not want us to be in that position again, because then the evening, whenever all the people came out, everybody was shocked that there were so many people that were interested in it. So I understand the importance of having, what is being called a stakeholder meeting, because there are a lot of people, that are downtown that could have some effects. But again, I don't want it to be the way the parks turned out to be, where it was just suddenly shown to everybody, and because really, I guess everybody in the city is a stakeholder, in some sense. As I say, just comments.
Yep. Thank you, Alderman Peterson. We understand your concern about wanting to make sure that the community has ample opportunities, especially during the COVID period. What we've found in our engagement practices during COVID is that we're able to reach a broader audience and more people using the virtual methods that we have used, particularly the survey. It's a a very effective means of reaching a very wide audience, far more than our in-person or even our virtual meetings do. So we'll be using a broad span of electronic means to be able to engage. And of course, we're always available by phone or by email for anyone to contact the planning department and have that in-person conversation or over the phone conversation. In terms of the stakeholder meetings, we do have a couple of them identified, but even our city employee ones are geared more towards specific groups of people who need to be able to be asked these questions. We'll be asking the same questions at a public meeting and through the survey. So we think that we can really engage a broad group, and all of that information becomes public and part of the report that comes out in August with the preliminary master plan. But there are numerous ways that we'll be able to engage and show information through videos and surveys and the website and public meetings as well.
Well, just make sure that public, at large is informed, not just the ones that maybe follow the city on Facebook or, that's just an example, but I'm just saying, please make sure that everyone, I don't mean take an ad out in the paper or on the radio or anything, but something.
Vice Mayor?
Oh, yeah. Thanks. So just FYI, sorry, don't know what happened there. That we make sure that we have ample meeting space. Of course, the boardroom is going to have to have ample space. Just one of the things that I wanted to say that sometimes we don't have meeting space for the aldermen. So I do like to have people come to City Hall to meet, and sometimes it's really difficult to find a space to meet. So we need to make sure that we're talking about and implementing that into the plan so we can actually have people come to City Hall. Because sometimes I want them to meet with other people while they're there or have a group. So any time we can meet from 4 to 12 in a room, we need to make sure we're talking about that in the boardroom I know you all are addressing. The other thing is, Ann brought up, with COVID, how those things play out. I think space reduction in some areas possibly could happen, but at the same time, I think, Eric, you said, people remote, you talked about remote work already. So people might work 2 or 3 days, and work a couple days from home, depending on what their job is. And so that all has to be in the discussion. I just wanted to go on record to say, yeah, I definitely think that that's important. The last thing I want to say is that I think it's really important that we have a center staircase in this building that goes up 2 or 3, 4 flights, how many flights we're going to have. So people are not pushing buttons and waiting on elevators. I think there needs to be a front and center staircase that people can walk into City Hall and immediately go upstairs to the different offices. And that people want to walk, people want to use staircases, and they shouldn't be hidden down this. We're going to have staircases at the end of halls and stuff, but we shouldn't have them hidden so people can't really just go in and go up the stairs. So that was one thing we had talked about originally about City Hall that we had planned, and I just make sure that was still in the discussion. That's all. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. One more point on that. Had we thought about in the plan when we're talking about this, some kind of portico or covering so people can get from parking garage to City Hall in bad weather? That was another point.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any other comments, and we'll be back in here at 7 o'clock to start the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting. And so thanks for everybody, and see you shortly.